There we go. That's the notification I was waiting for. Hello, everybody, and good morning. My name is Tatiana, and welcome to our open office hours. I will let the team introduce themselves.
Hey, everybody, it's Hannah. Welcome.
Hey everybody, welcome. It's Andy.
Thank you so much for joining us, you guys. We're super excited to be here. It's almost the weekend. At least where I'm at, the weather is beautiful. I'm in a super great mood and just excited to be here with you guys today. So I wanted to just kind of kick it off with giving you guys a little bit of a background. We have released or are starting to release a huge and exciting update to policies through Syncro. So over the last couple of weeks, we've had Andy, who is our senior product manager, join us to do a deep dive on those, answer super in-depth questions for you guys. So today we are not going to be doing a deep dive. We're more along the lines going to just be answering almost like a regular Q&A. But again, if there's anything specific about the policy inheritance that you guys have questions on, that is what Andy is here for, is to help us out a little bit. So in regards to how we're going to structure today's conversation, we do have the Q&A for questions. So if there's anything you guys are curious about, whether that's related to the new policy inheritance release, or if there's anything else, if you guys are new to Syncro, literally anything that's on your mind, that is what we're here for. We've all blocked our calendars to spend the next hour together with you guys to make sure that you have all the information that you need in order to succeed with Syncro. So please drop your questions into the Q&A as you have them, as they come up. And then the chat box we are going to be using to drop links for you guys. So if we're referencing our YouTube video or a YouTube channel or anything else, definitely keep an eye out on the chat box for any of those links. So it looks like we have more and more people filtering in. Welcome everybody who's new. And again, please use the Q&A for any questions. And let's get started. And if there aren't any questions, we'll just tell you all of our features. I mean, Hannah and I are both in sales, so we can talk for like hours and hours on end and we won't get tired. So definitely let us know what you're curious about. Abraham, I see that you raised your hand. We don't have a way to unmute you. So if you can please drop your question into the Q&A, that would be awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yes, and everybody, I do see some questions coming in, but you guys, Andy is here. Take advantage. Okay, did I say that out loud? But definitely ask whatever questions that you would like.
I'll take one from Jeffy saying, I'm not seeing the option to turn on policy inheritance. When should we all have that available by? So we did a very small wave yesterday. We're doing at least 1 or 2 more waves today. We expect that process to take 2 weeks-ish before everybody has it. And you'll get an in-app notification when you're part of that wave. So you can, and it will have instructions on where to go on the platform to go ahead and enable that for you.
Awesome. I haven't had a chance to read through this, but we're just going to kind of just jump in. I have a question here from Michael. It says, Mailer is great, but would be great if we had more of a CRM service built in. You all have talked about promoting your program at Robbins, but we don't have anything that targets potential customers before they are a customer. So I hear your feedback on this one. I will share my screen real quick and I'll show you guys. We do have kind of a one way that you can think about approaching. If I was an MSP, this is one way that I would consider using Syncro in order to send emails to either leads or current customers. So the thing is with Syncro, you do have, if we go over to the customer information section, and I'll pull up the customer Larry here, we do have custom fields that you can use through Syncro. And that is what I would recommend doing is if you go over to a customer profile, you can create a custom field. And I have a couple in here. Looks like we do a ton of testing, so we might need to clean this area up for us. But you can create a custom field called something like customer type, or what kind of, is this a lead? Is this somebody who is already a current customer? Is this a business customer? Is it as a residential customer? So you can use that basically as a drop-down menu here. So even if somebody is technically a lead for you, they're not they haven't signed a contract, they're not making payments yet, you could still pull them into the Syncro platform as a customer, because obviously it doesn't cost you anything to do that, and then just label them as a lead using that custom field type. And then in that case, again, with the mailer campaign that we have available for you guys here, you can either use one of the preset ones that we have out of the box, or you can create a brand new custom campaign. And again, the purpose here is that you can then use that saved customer search using that custom field. So you can say, I only want to send this specific email to my leads or to my prospects that don't have a contract with me yet. Or maybe you ran some type of marketing campaign and you've listed all of those people and categorized those prospects under a specific custom field type. There is a really easy way for you to target those people specifically. So obviously not a full-blown CRM like drip campaigns, things like that based on actions, but that is one way that you could think about organizing those emails going out.
Michael, I'll add that all I do all day, every day is talk about CRM and more ways to make sales happen for y'all. So this is very,
Yes.
very high on my radar specifically.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for that. Michael also has just another feature request, but I do have a recommendation for you. So he's saying, is it possible to get a new feature that would allow us to request a quote for a price of a part systems from within a ticket? Under parts, it is assumed that the customer has paid for the part and it is part of the ticket. In this case, the ticket would be created and a part price request can be created, much like a quote, and then if the part was approved, it can be converted into a ticket and imported into parts for an order. So Michael, I don't know if you've checked out our integration with Zomentum. Zomentum is a quoting and estimator tool that can actually quote out from 4 parts and then push that as an estimate into the system. And then I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. So once that is pushed from Zomentum, so you can kind of start that there and then push it into the system as an estimate, this can actually be approved in the customer portal, or emailed to the client and then taken to a ticket or taken to an invoice. You can even take it to a ticket and then make an invoice to get paid on it and then do more work on the ticket and then update the invoice. So we'll have some options for you there, but I will pass along that feature request, but also recommend that you check out Zomentum.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Hannah. I'm going to grab a question here. It says, has anything changed with the ticket creation based on emails? We have not received any new tickets, even though the emails are coming into our mailbox. So I would definitely reach out to support on this one. I'm going to share my screen super quick just to make sure you have your mailbox set up through Syncro. It sounds like you have emails coming into your inbox through whatever email provider that you're using, but through Syncro, make sure you have your mailboxes set up here to where if somebody emails like help@yourcompany.com, you need to make sure the mailbox is set up. It's forwarding to your email provider or from your email provider and then generating tickets. Make sure you have these settings assigned correctly here. And if it's still not generating, definitely please reach out to our support team so that they can take a closer look and troubleshoot that for you, because I don't think we've released any new features around that would prevent that from happening.
Got a question from Derek. He's asking about asset reports, saying that they're limited to 50 assets per report. Derek, I don't know what reports you're referring to specifically. I mean, there's like an asset audit report that should be able to report on as many assets as you want, I believe. And then there's an internal report builder that you can also do, which is more of like an overall view of your entire like fleet. And I think that can go up to 100, but normally that's designed to be very specific and targeted to whatever you're looking for at the time. So if you want to put in like a specific report, I can look at it, but check out the asset audit report. That should kind of be anything that you want. Got a question from Hannah saying, okay, so she's saying when you add policy folders using dynamic line items, we're talking about our recurring billing system here. It's difficult to see what the line item's price is unless the invoice is actually generated. Yeah, that's a thing on our list to go ahead and add right now. It'll be whatever you add. I mean, it's not going to change, obviously, but yeah, if you have to go back and verify you have a price right, you would have to check a previous invoice right now. So totally agree with you there. We're going to work on that. And then Michael's asking if there's a way to disable sound when using Splashtop by default. Michael, there's not. However, I'm pretty sure that's just a registry flag. So you should be able to script that pretty easily if that's something that you require for one reason or another.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andy. I have a question here from Jeff. He says, in the assets and RMM section, all of our clients' Windows 10 machines that are newer versions of Windows, the 20H2, 21H1, all show as an OS release version of 2009 and not the 20H2 or 21H1. Older versions display accurately. Do you know why that is? Is there another field that we should be using instead to see the version or release of new Windows 10 updates? So I think I know what you're talking about. Let me share my screen here real quick. So here in the assets and RMM section, I've customized my columns and I've added this OS release version. And I do see it shows 1909 and then 2009. So I'm not 100% sure if there's a reason those are not being updated. Obviously, there's ways to run scripts and then pre-fill custom fields on the asset level. But I can definitely ask our team to see why those are not being updated to the most recent version for you, and I'll pass that along to the team for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We have this one for Corey, but I think Corey might be asking the group. Has anyone had issue trying to integrate ThreatLocker with Syncro? We have connected with ThreatLocker. However, under scripts, the value is supposed to be customer_business name and the full name, but the only option there is of our clients to be listed under that value. So Corey, I'm going to leave this up so that anybody else in the group today can chime in if they've had experienced other issues there.
And Jeremy's adding some context to what Michael was asking about the Splashtop audio issue. He says that he thinks that there's a script in the community library, or it might be on Facebook, one or the other. But basically he's saying if you set it as an onboarding policy for new assets, that'll set the registry flag for you. So thanks, Jeremy. That's a good suggestion. I just want to call out one. I don't know if it's Friday or what the deal is. We're not seeing a ton of questions, which is kind of rare in this. So if anybody wants to ask something outside of Syncro, like just general MSP business questions, or ping me on advice on what, I'm happy to answer whatever, since you got me.
You guys, this is gold. You have no idea how many companies Andy has consulted for, and he's owned his own MSP. So if you're like, how do I get new customers? How should I price my product? Like, I want to ask questions. Andy, is that allowed? Can I just, I will take this opportunity if you guys don't want to jump on it, but I'll give it a couple minutes, because definitely if there's anything that is making you lose sleep at night within your business, or you're kind of like, how is everybody else doing it? Or, hey, I'm new, what's the best way to do XYZ, even if it's not specifically Syncro related. Andy is your man. He has a ton of experience, so definitely do not pass the opportunity. I feel like we should have just marketed that separately. We need to Ask Andy series just in general. I have a quick update. Says for Tatiana, when we try to move multiple assets into a new customer, the page reports it is done, but it never moves the assets into the other customer. Let me share my screen and see if we can take a look at this together, and you tell me if I'm looking at the right spot. So how I would move assets from customer to customer is if you go to the assets and RMM section and then you select multiple endpoints, you should be able to go to manage and then change customer, and then retype, wherever you're trying to move it to, and then also under which policy you're trying to apply that to, and then save. So tell me if you're seeing something different or if you're not seeing that at all. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove this question, but that is the way that you would move multiple assets into a new customer. I'm not sure which page says that it's done. So please give me, yeah, it's the correct steps, but it does not work for us. Yeah, please reach out to support. Please email help@syncromsp.com, because that should not be happening. That is the way that it's designed to work. So if it doesn't, please let us know so we can fix it for you.
I'll jump in really quick with this Hannah question about billing before we let Andy take the floor here. Okay, so Hannah's asking another billing question for you. We bundle both Syncro devices and other devices like NAS under the same protection bundle when billing. If using policy folder-based billing, this doesn't work, so we're currently creating two separate line items. I'm aware we could do an asset search, but I'm curious what your recommendations would be. So Hannah, I would use the asset search there, but mark those devices with a specific custom field. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So on those assets that need to be billed specifically with that bundle, where it's, hey, it's a monitored device, plus a NAS device, that then I would go ahead and create a custom field that's kind of denoting that package. So, hey, this device is part of that specific package, and then be able to create your saved asset search and then pull that into your recurring invoice. So here, that way you could search based on that specific custom field.
Okay, so we got a couple policy questions, a couple business ones I'll take. Corey's asking, do I have any advice how to reach out to a prospect? I do, Corey, but if you let me know specifically what we're talking about here, is this just how do I get more prospects, or you've got somebody like a lead that came in and it's a hot lead and you're trying to understand how best to approach them or what best to sell them? If you let me know that, I'll be happy to answer that one. Sonny's asking, is the new RMM policy system not available to anyone yet? And no, it's not. We're rolling it out over the next 2 weeks. So by the end of the next 2 weeks, you're going to have it one way or another. We're doing rollouts every day, Monday through Friday. And we'll do an in-app notification when your account has been hit with that, and it'll give you instructions on what to do. Let's see. Jeremy's asking advice on hiring his first staffer. Would it be smart to look for a part-time 1099 tier 1 tech first, or dive in both feet for a tier 2 tech that hopefully will free up your time for more sales? Jeremy, I'm going to answer this a little bit differently for you because I know you specifically. You are obviously not a tier 1 tech. And I think at the stage of the game that you're in, the idea is to really take off the BS tasks off your plate so you have more time to sell. If you have two-tier techs, and that's the entire company, that often sometimes can cause conflicts where it's not really sure what stuff you want to take on and what stuff they want to take on, particularly because the majority of your customers as a one-tech MSP, which you are now, you're already going to know who the VIPs are and you're going to want to handle them anyways. So I would definitely hire a tier 1 tech first. And you had another comment below that you keep in mind you're committed to running the business debt free and a business loan is off the table. So if that's the case, it really comes down to how much above and beyond your means to live that you're earning right now do you have to go spend on a tech? If you're already at the point when you're working 50, 60 hours a week and you really can't bring on any more intake from customers, then yes, I would bring somebody on full time. If you only have 5 hours a week to give them and then you're hoping to sell through the rest of the time with the task they're taking from you, then I would go part-time. And I wouldn't necessarily, the debt thing is really up to you. Obviously you can grow faster by bringing folks on, but if you bring 10 techs on and you've got no business to give them, obviously you're going to be burning through a bunch of money there.
So good. Love that. Thank you, Andy. I have a question here from Sherwin. Says, is there a way, whoops, disappeared. Is there a way to give a Syncro user or a technician access to assets of certain clients? We are wanting to assign one tech to several customers. We don't want them to be able to see other clients' information. So this is a feature request at this time to just say it's super straightforward. We do have a way, if you guys go over to the admin section through Syncro, and then you go over into the security groups, we do have a way for you, if you're working with, for example, a contractor that needs access to only one specific client, or maybe you're working with a large enterprise customer that has an internal IT department that they're working with as well, you can purchase them a license of Syncro and then assign them to the security groups as a single customer under the single customer permission. So as you can see here, you either have all or just one specific customer. So on that Syncro users profile, you would say, I only want them to be part of the security group that only gives them access to Larry's business. So it is a feature request to say, I want them to have, I want tech number 1 to have access to customers A through C, tech number 2 to have access for D to G or whatever it might be. So right now it's either just one or all of them.
This is an anonymous person. They're asking, they're basically asking for more granularity in the permissions, particularly within the administration permissions. If you want to send that into support and detail specifically out what you would like segmented off, I could definitely take a look at that. besides that, I know that in 2022, we're going to, can't say for certain, but I think we're going to try to look at more record-based permissions as well, where you could say, hey, you know, Tech A is responsible for these subsets of customers and they can't see others, and things like that. But yeah, if you've got very specific ones, let me know. Or like I said, send it to support and I'll look at it. And we can definitely evaluate that. And then Kimberly, I apologize. I'm going to ask a lot of people for extra context on some of the business ones, but she's saying that we're a small business, about 1,000 endpoints. Suggestions for getting small rural business to go contract. Market is very different in rural than in big cities. I agree. If are these customers that you already have as like hourly rates, or you're saying that you're trying to go off and grab a bunch of new leads and get them under contract, and you're trying to figure out how best to approach that? If you want to go ahead and ask another question, I'll be happy to take that one on.
Cool. I'm going to go ahead and jump in real quick. So Shane is asking, is there a way to send ticket autoresponders, but only after hours? Seems like it should work, but it doesn't for me when configured only for after hours. I'm just going to go ahead and show you a couple of settings here just to make sure that you have. And then Shane, if you feel like you have all these settings, but it's not working, no problem, write that into support for us. So in the admin section, you want to make sure that you have your business hours set up the way that you want. And then in your mailboxes, so I'm just going to head down here. When you edit a specific mailbox, and especially if you have multiple, you will need to do this in each of them. You want to make sure you have this box checked, so the enable after hours responders. Then when you do that, you'll be able to edit the advanced override. So especially even if you've enabled these, you want to edit what the after hours responders are. So make sure you have all of these edited. And then if you feel like it's still not functioning the way it should, definitely write into support. That way they can help you there. And then Nariza has a question. Is it possible to change the standard labor rate for tickets for a single customer? Thank you. Yes. So you'll want to go ahead and leverage a contract for that. So in Syncro, you'll be able to create a contract for a customer. And this is where we are setting up the rules for that client. And so here, if I were to go ahead and jump into one of these contracts, I can decide, okay, that specific labor rate, so the standard labor rate, if it's $250 for everybody else, but for this particular customer, it's going to be, you know, 100 and, oh, that's too much, 150, then I can go ahead and make that edit here, and I can make sure that it applies to all of their tickets as their customized standard labor rate.
Super helpful. Thank you so much, Hannah. I have a question here from Laura. Says, how is retired hardware handled? So obviously from my side, I can give you a couple ideas of how you can do that through Syncro, but if anybody else here has suggestions of how they handle it, also welcome to drop that into the Q&A as well. So it says, we would like to keep a record of these items for historical purposes, even if they are no longer in use. We don't want to delete the item for risk of losing any tickets, notes, or other information that was attached to the device. So I'm going to share my screen. I'll show you a couple of things here. You could, if you wanted to, obviously just rename the asset, and then it will be sitting here in the assets and RMM section like a regular endpoint. Another option here is to create a custom field on the asset. And then you can kind of group those types of endpoints together if for some reason you wanted like a total list of assets that are not currently being actively used. So you could here, if you go to the asset profile, scroll down just a little bit, you can say here in the custom fields, you can say like retired endpoint, or no longer in use, or no longer providing services for, something like that. And then again, if a custom field exists on the asset level, you can then create a saved asset search, and then just searching for that specific custom field. So you can say custom drop-down field is asset is retired, or whatever it might be, just to group them all together. We do have an option, and I'm curious, I didn't have a chance to test this, but we do have an option on in Syncro to archive a customer specifically. So let me see if this customer has any assets. I just want to take a look at that real quick. I don't, but I know if you do, you can archive a customer. Not 100% sure what happens to the assets that are related to that if they get taken out of that kind of main assets and RMM section. That might be something to take a look at, but it sounded like you're more looking for individual assets that are no longer you're providing services for. So those would be the couple suggestions that I have for you there.
Okay, Kimberly gave me an update. She's saying these are current customers, and She was basically asking the best way to try to move them over to contract. So I'm going to say some stuff here that kind of flies in the face a lot of the stuff that you're going to read online and thought leadership stuff that you might read online. A lot of MSPs, especially in the early stages, believe that managed services is some kind of alternate world from break fix, and in reality it's not. They're all paying you money to do the same work. It's just being billed differently. And so what I mean by that is, Kimberly, I'll give you an example. If you've got a customer who's paying you $100 an hour and they're averaging 10 hours of work a month, they're paying you $1,000. So what is the advantage to you by getting them under a contract for $1,000 a month, where you're going to probably do 10 hours of work on average? It's the same thing. The difference actually is that when you have them under break fix, I would argue that there is no implied SLA. A lot of times, if you can come the same day, people are like, oh man, this company is the best. Where if they're paying you $1,000 a month, they're going to expect you to, every issue they have is an automatic emergency. It's ending the world as far as they're concerned. Now, so what I'd really say is the only time that you want to move them under contract is if you're afraid of A, them getting poached by another MSP. That certainly makes sense. Or B, you think that you can add services where they're now going to pay you more money a month, or where you're going to make more money an hour. For instance, if you could tell them, look, you're going to pay me $1,200 a month, and it's going to include 10 hours of service, whether or not you have to imply 10 hours of service or not, and you're going to basically make more revenue per hour, then that's when you want to make that play. Honestly, if you're not worried about making that play is going to run one of your customers off, make it with every single one. Just make sure that at the end of the day, the contract is going to generate you more revenue than the hourly work would generate you revenue. And I can't tell you how many MSPs I've consulted for in my day that just believe that getting them under contract was more important than having them as a break fix customer. So instead of that $1,000 a month, they'd sign a contract for $750 doing the same amount of work. It makes no sense whatsoever. And that's just not for the rural folks. That advice can be given to anyone. And there's definitely customers that are more primed for contracts and ones that aren't. Selling it as almost like insurance, because now you're going to have SLAs. And I'm sure you had mentioned you had 1,000 customers, and I know you said that's small, but realistically that means that your customers like you because they're not leaving, and that you're confident enough to keep growing that number. Because if you're not, obviously you don't get to 1,000. So I'd really focus on just the hourly rates that you're putting in there. And obviously what you're doing now is right. So again, contracts make sense if they're going to make you more money. They don't otherwise. And then Jeff saying, when I ran an MSP, what was my most successful way of finding qualified leads and prospects? Okay, so I'll give you a couple funny stories here. The best way ever for me was something called EDDM, which is every door direct mail, which is done through USPS. You can basically target mail routes with like a flyer, and it's a little bit weird, but you'll give them like 1,000 flyers and they'll go deliver one on a particular day that you choose to every house in a particular neighborhood. And what's particularly cool about this, and a lot of people tend to dislike marketing because they'll do 1 or 2 campaigns and they don't pay off, but marketing is actually a long game. You're assuming that 1,000 people have broken computers if you go market to 1,000 people. That's obviously not the case, but if they see it every single month, the moment they have a broken computer or whatever they need your help for, they're going to remember you. They're going to remember that, oh, I was getting this every month. Maybe I have it in my drawer. Maybe I'm just going to wait until I see it the next month. But it's more about getting your name out there as frequently as possible in front of people. And the other thing is making sure that you're qualifying the right prospects. So here's a funny story. The first campaign I ever did, I spent like $1,500. I got this magic piece of art that I made myself, which really means it wasn't that great, but let's be honest, I'm not super good at art. But it was a flyer and I spent a lot of time on it. It did everything that I did. And I targeted my own neighborhood thinking, hey, I can go in and get these people. I don't have to spend a lot of time driving around. And after that was all said and done, $1,500, I got one call from the entire campaign. And it was a guy to take me off the effing list. That was what he told me, and he hung up on me. And that was the entire contents of how that went end to end. And what I didn't realize is that I was targeting a lower end neighborhood at the time, and it was filled with young people who could obviously fix their own problems. And it was filled with folks that a lot of them were renting even, or were just low income, where $100 an hour to fix a computer is actually a question of, do I need to live without fixing my computer? So we completely switched that, and I started targeting senior communities that were very, very well to do. Those folks typically are not super tech savvy. And it's a completely different world where you may have to fight with a customer whether or not you want to spend an hour and a half to recover something from a failed hard drive or something. Where with this other subset of folks, they can have like Windows can crash once and they'll be like, ah, should I just go buy a new computer? It's a completely different world. And then more importantly, it's about all of the resources that they have. Typically success begets success. That's in anything in life. And so if you target a community where these people are relatively successful, they probably have businesses that they're still involved in. They might sit on boards of businesses. One of my number one ways to get referrals was these folks loved us. They would go play golf with all their buddies and you become like their IT person. It doesn't matter if it's for a residential customer, a massive sprawling office complex. That level of referrals cannot be understated. If you can just get one or two folks in that subset of demographic, then usually it turns into solid gold.
So good. I wasn't ready for that story to be over, Andy. Please keep asking good questions, you guys. This is amazing. Love that. Okay, real quick, I'm gonna follow that with a comment from Gary that says, we would also love to have granular permissions to assign text to clients. One of my thoughts is you can assign text to a customer search query. Yeah, that is one way you can do it. I'll share my screen super quick, and then we'll get back to story time, hopefully. But you could here in, yes, you could on a customer profile, obviously build out a custom field with the names of your techs of like who usually handles this customer specifically, or who's like, their direct point of contact or something like that. Another way to do this is through mailboxes as well as through SLAs. So I'll show you both of those as well. Just super quick. In mailboxes, you have a way, like if your tech gets emailed directly, like Tatiana@yourcompany.com, you could make sure that those emails go and get directly assigned to Tatiana. Well, technically I'm the demo engineer. So that is one way to do it. Or another way is if you take a look at the tickets and then SLAs, there is a way to assign, let's say for this 24-hour SLA, you could say this tech is the one that's responsible for this specific SLA. If you have a client specific SLA, so you could say like 24-hour Larry's business. So those are a couple other ways to do that. Hopefully that helps.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to take this from Rob. Hi, happy Friday. Happy Friday, Rob. Is there a way to automatically send a monthly statement for outstanding balances? There sure is. And so I am going to go ahead and pull up the reports section. And so here inside the reports, you are going to want to open up the open balances by customer. And then there is going to be an option to send statements. And so you can pull this out into a CSV if you need, but then that way you'll be able to send the monthly statements and let them know, hey, it's time to pay.
Love that. Thank you so much, Hannah. I'm going to grab a quick update here from Jay. He says how he handles retired assets is he merges them with the device that replaces it. So that totally makes sense. Yeah, because it'll keep that information. So super thankful. Thanks, Jay, for chiming in there.
And actually, just a quick note on that. I'm trying to look at a better way to retire assets. I'd like to turn it into like an asset tracking only model, or a kind of like a custom asset where it just shows the data, but it doesn't really allow you to do anything to it. So that's something that we're looking at. Rob's asking if I have examples of contracts that a customer would sign. I don't know, Rob, if you want to do a follow-up, I don't know if you're saying like just examples of what to put in it, or you want me to send you like an actual contract. I'm not going to do the latter because I don't want to get sued if you think my contract sucks and it didn't do what you wanted it to do. But if it's the other one, let me know and I'll answer that for you. Sonny's saying he thinks it takes a full year of someone seeing your brand before you become a trusted entity in their minds. Sonny, I don't necessarily agree with that. I do agree with that with a lot of businesses, but in this kind of business, particularly if you're talking about break fix customers, they don't care if you've been in business for 10 years or for 2 days. They care that their stuff is broken and they can get someone out to their home immediately or their business immediately. It does play a little bit more into when you're doing like targeting businesses, but at the same time, once a business makes that decision that, hey, I think we're growing, we're kind of at the cusp where we might need to get internal IT, but let's see if we can outsource it first. It's rare that they would have been like thinking about this for the past couple of years and like stacking people that call them their business cards and their pamphlets or whatever. So yeah, with this one, I think it does work a little bit different. Then someone, an anonymous attendee is saying they're new to Syncro, but we recently acquired Watchman Monitoring, which primarily focuses on Mac-based reporting. What type of functionality do we currently have supporting Macs in mixed platform environments, and what type of functionality are you hoping to implement in the future? So yeah, so Watchman is mainly for one-off monitoring of individual Macs. So we've got our Mac agent, which is coming out of beta by the end of the year. It's actually in open beta now, and it's almost virtually complete. There's one scripting thing we're adding to it, and we're adding our native Splashtop to it, and then that'll bring it out of release. In terms of working in mixed environments, our goal is obviously to have the Mac agent relatively on par with our Windows agent, and when we release it, it'll be relatively close. So you can run those side by side with Windows machines today without much of an issue. And then in terms of what we're doing in the future, Watchman brings a lot of monitoring capability that Syncro doesn't have today, particularly with Macs. And I'll give you like one quick example. Mac backups are weird in the Windows world. It's kind of segmented. In Mac, they actually have Time Machine, which is awesome. Like it's weird to have an OS actually do something that works amazingly well, and Time Machine is one of those things. So a good example would be adding a check to let you know if Time Machine is stopped not running, hasn't done a backup in X days, things like that. They bring a lot of that, and we're planning on implementing a lot of that into the platform.
I'll grab one here. David says, Syncro documentation for trying to establish systems of procedures or processes. I think that's what SOP stands for. How would you folks propose trying to handle documentation from a nested or non-nested perspective for dealing with internal procedures, etc.? So I'm going to share my screen here real quick, and a really good place to ask this type of question as well is over either on our Facebook group or our community forum, because there's obviously thousands of people in there versus 3 of us here today that are going to do things a little bit differently than how I'll show you right now. So documentation wise through Syncro, there's a couple things to know. We do have a way for you to pop, quickly accessed or documentation you would like to quickly access here on the left side. I'll show you how to do that here in just a second. But other than that, when you're building out documentation through Syncro, what the benefits here of the built-in documentation is that you can either keep it internal just for you and your techs. You can make it available to your customers via a customer portal, just to one specifically. Maybe you have like an employee directory for them, or I don't know, HR processes or something like that. Or you can make it all customer portals. Here's our holiday hours, call us here in cases of emergency, stuff like that. So and then obviously being able to use templates of like how to do this one thing, step 1 through 3. So that's the built-in documentation through Syncro. I'll show you how to create those quick links here on the left side. So I'll go ahead and, it actually links it there. So the last time I did this, let me find that specific one. I guess we can just create a brand new one. So you need to put in you have to actually use this link right here, and then say like whatever address you want to send it to, or like the actual link of the documentation page here. And then I don't remember what you type into here. Let me get back to you on that. I think it's like either top level policy, or I don't remember what the actual documentation is listed here. So let me drop that link into the chat box for you. But that's basically how you would make it listed and popped up here on the left side for any quick links or quick documentation that you need your text to follow in terms of procedures of how to onboard a new customer, or how if a customer lets somebody go, how do you remove that employee from the system, or whatever else it might be. So I'll drop that KB with those specific instructions on how to create that left navigation. I think that's what it might be, left dash nav, but let me follow up with you and drop that into the chat box.
I've got a couple here. Abraham says, Andy, love your story. Cool, glad. I am very new to Syncro. I have a technical resources assigned to a client. The client has employees that he trusts, employees he does not. Can we have multiple policies for some users to have the Syncro agent typically deployed? and some users hide Syncro entirely. Oh, so it's entirely hidden to the user, or create a policy that users cannot lock out from removing Syncro. Yeah, I think I understand what you're asking. So with what we just really, you could do this before too, but what we just released with policy inheritance that your account will get hit with it relatively shortly here, is actually really easy to do. So I don't know how many I assume there would just be like, I trust you and I don't trust you. I mean, that could be 2 folders, and then you would assign a policy to each folder and move each contact's respective asset or assets into each folder. You can have them so you can't hide that we installed Syncro. And I say that because it's kind of a fine line between, because it does have like admin access to the entire system. So it's a little bit like in that sketchy area where it's not really cool to do that, but you can prevent it from being uninstalled. In the policy, there's a thing in miscellaneous for uninstall code. And so it's like a 4-digit code. Without the code, they won't be able to uninstall it, so they can't remove it. And then, yeah, you can have very specific policies for some employees where you don't with the other. You can, I don't think you could actually go on and like monitor their activity in real time, like through remote access, and not let them know you access the machine. But there's certainly things you could do, like scripting their browser history and stuff. If you think they're blowing time or whatever, you can do all of that for sure. Fauzi's saying to the best team in the world, happy Friday. Just for context, he's talking about Tatiana and Hannah. We were wondering if there is a way to automate a ticket creation every time we launch remote access. Also waiting on the deep dive scripting video. Fauzi, this could be because it's Friday, or I just released policy inheritance and my mind is broken, but I'm pretty sure if you check our YouTube video, our YouTube channel, I'm pretty sure we've got a deep dive scripting video I did on there at one point. If not, call me out on it and I'll make one. In terms of the remote access question, no, you can't do that. All that happens when you end the session is that we log the time that it was ended, basically. We could theoretically add that, I guess, if you want to let me know why. I mean, are you opening a ticket like every single time? Is this like a toggle option? If you want to let me know what you're thinking, I'll kind of make a note of it on my end and see if there's something we might do there, assuming it made sense for everybody. And then Rob is asking, okay, so he was asking about the contract thing. Examples of what I would put in, and when I created mine, did I go to a lawyer or did I use a boilerplate version? So yes, I used a lawyer. I would kind of always recommend that, and I would make very clear to them specifically what you're looking to do. And this is what I would ask for. First and foremost, anyone who signs a contract with you should immediately waive you of any liability. I cannot stress that enough. I've never been sued, but I've known plenty of MSPs that have been sued. And what a lot of people don't realize is that you can be in no fault whatsoever. You can get sued and you either pay out that suit and settle, or you have to pay your own legal team to go off and defend yourself against this. It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong, you incur those costs. So limiting yourself from liability is number one. Number two is, I don't know why people do this, but they define this insane scope of services within their contracts. Do the exact opposite. If you know there's things that you're not going to do, they're like, hey, I need you to dig up my parking lot and run this line, then make sure that that's not stuff that you're going to be doing. Because otherwise, if you say, yeah, I'm doing everything, they're obviously going to expect you to do everything. And then other than that, I would clearly define what they're paying for today and what they might pay for tomorrow. And what I mean by that is a lot of folks, especially when they're starting off, think that ACE, all you can eat contracts, are the way to go because that's what all the big MSPs are doing. And I would highly recommend against that. That is a very dangerous place to get in. And it comes down to something I call customer qualification. When you're just starting off, you normally want to price your contracts based on how many hours a month you're expecting to spend at the customer. And that doesn't just mean the scope of work. If you go into a place and they're like, hey, my entire system crashed, and what they really mean is they unplugged the monitor and they don't know how to turn it back on, or you have to explain to them for a half an hour on the phone where the power button is. It could be the same scope of work, but you have to price that contract higher. If you don't, you're just earning less money for every one of your hours, which of course are finite. So what I would recommend doing is going into block hour contracts, which is you're going to pay X amount of dollars, and it can be a discount because they're paying you under contract for X amount of hours a month. And here's what you're going to pay if it goes beyond that. And I would do the same thing with add-ons. And you can even do this in a way that provides additional value for the customer. If they got 10 employees or 10 computers, you can say, look, I'm going to include 10 AV licenses as part of this fee. Nobody wants to do the the airline thing where I go and I have to check my bag and pay 50 bucks. I want peanuts, it's $5, and water's 10 bucks. Like they just want to know this is what I'm paying. And on top of that, you can even say, look, I know that it looks like you're going to be growing, so I'm going to include 15 antivirus licenses. Who cares? They're only going to use 10 of them. It doesn't matter. And then when you go beyond that, I'm going to charge you at $10 a piece or $5 a piece or whatever it is. And what that allows your prospect to do is take that $5 or $10, multiply it by the amount of AV licenses or backup or whatever you're saying you're going to include. And they can actually find value in that and quickly price out, oh, wow, they're cheaper per hour because they're including all this other stuff, and it helps you compete with other folks. So in terms of what you want, no liability, clearly define what's going to be in there, and clearly define a growth pattern for them where they know that they can grow and they're not going to get nickeled and dimed by you. Nobody wants to hear that. Sonny's asking, how do you deal with companies who are running unsupported software and they refuse to upgrade? That's a super good question, and it really depends if you are successful enough to want to say, I don't want your business. And most MSPs probably are not at that level. And if you're not, it's up to you. So for instance, if they want to use Windows 7, which is no longer supported, and they refuse to upgrade, you have two choices. You can keep them, and there's obviously a higher level of liability for you. You can't guarantee that there's going to be no vulnerabilities because Windows isn't patching them anymore. So it's kind of like, are you willing to take on that liability for the money? And if you are, I would probably say do so at an increased rate, or I would drop them. Because if you've got this customer who has a ton of liability, and on top of a lot of liability, it might be an issue that's not easy to figure out. Like if Windows 11 comes out and something doesn't work, 4 million people online are going to be talking about it, but nobody's going to be talking about some Windows 7 vulnerability. It hasn't been around forever. So yeah, in most cases, I would actually say drop them. But again, it obviously, you can't walk from money in all instances. So I would try to increase the price before you drop them.
So good. Corey, I'll grab this one from the top. I haven't seen anybody else respond to the threat locker one, so I'm curious. I kind of reread it a couple times, and I'm curious to see if this is going to be helpful to you. You said we have connected threat locker. However, under scripts, the value is supposed to be customer, business name, and full name, but the only option there is one of our clients listed under that value. So I'm gonna share my screen and tell me if I'm going in the right or wrong direction. And then for those of you that didn't see, I did drop the instructions on how to build out that documentation into the chat box for you guys. But if we go to the customer profile, sometimes this is a little confusing in how this is organized, because when you're initially building out your customer profile, I'm going to go ahead and edit this and we'll pretend this is a brand new customer, but you could fill out first and last name, and then there's a separate line for business name. So for mine, I keep this empty and I just call mine Larry's Business, which is why it's listed as this top level one here. So I think, like you said, if your tags are pulling in business and first and last name, but either of these are blank, or maybe you only have first and last name and this one is blank. Again, I don't know if that has anything to do with the way that your tags are working, but again, if there's an integration that we have or a script that we have that is not working in the way that the documentation lays out it's supposed to work, definitely reach out to our support, because obviously it's hard for us to troubleshoot something like that live on a call, since we're not tech support, we're more on the sales side, even though we are super knowledgeable about the product. So definitely reach out to help@syncromsp.com.
Thank you so much, Tatiana. I just had an additional thought about Fuzi's question, because yeah, I'm curious too if the ticket is not getting opened already. So if you're opening the ticket and then of course remoting in, and obviously we'd want to see if we could automate that. One thing you could do is, if you're looking up the asset already to be able to go and remote in, I would just hit this quick magnifying glass and then open the ticket this way. That way, what it will do is it will pull the device into the ticket so you can remote in, and literally all you have to do is three quick fields. So ticket title, issue type, and description. And now I can already go ahead and create my ticket and then be able to remote into the device, but now my ticket is already opened. So I don't know if that would help, but that was just another thought I had there.
That's a super good suggestion, yeah. Okay, a couple other ones. Hannah is saying, curious about your thoughts on contract implementation. We're trying to figure out how this benefits us and what is useful, not useful to us. For example, we love it for hourly labor since different customers have different rates. However, if we have contracted rate for a PAX 8 integrated product, The pro rates from PAX 8 don't calculate. With the PAX 8 thing specifically, I don't know how you bill, but I would kind of bill your customers. If you're billing individual customers outside of the contract, meaning you've got a contract for service and then a separate agreement for like Office 365 licenses or AV licenses or whatever, I would charge them the full rate regardless. I mean, they're normally like $10 or something, so I don't think anybody's going to care about the charging $5 instead of 10 or whatever. And then that will kind of unify your contracts in a much easier way. In terms of implementing the contracts, I would put contracts on for everybody for the reason that you said. You're going to be billing different rates for different things. And then once you start to move people into managed services where it is a physical contract every month, and just to clarify, we have a contract system for everybody else listening, but you can also go in and create a contract for a break fix customer and say like, this customer's hourly rate is $100, where customer B's rate under a different contract might be $125. And you can even have different contracts for different types of things. So like you could have one customer who they have like one rate for during business hours and then one for like weekends or after hours kind of thing. So yeah, anytime it makes you more efficient, obviously I'd implement it. Eventually, as you start to get more and more contract customers, you just kind of need it for everybody. And Hannah again saying, okay, so there's a part 2 question. What are use cases where you'd recommend contracting a rate versus not contracting a rate? There's one where you're going to make more money. And that's the same for almost every answer I'll ever give. Put the two side by side, plan it out over a year, plan it out over 3 years, understand what the referral value of this customer is and build that into your calculations. And if you can ever make $1 more through a contract, do it. If you can't, never do it. Because like I mentioned before, the minute you're under contract, you're typically obligated to SLAs, where with hourly customers, you're not. And if you get into a situation, especially as a smaller MSP, where you take on more than you can chew and the world happens to end for everybody in the same day at the same time, you're going to start breaching SLAs, but you can't do that if they're hourly. But for money, do it. So that's always going to kind of be the arbiter there for me. George is asking, is there a SheerWeb integration? There is not. If not, is it coming? I will never say it's not coming. I know we did focus on PAX 8 because they're typically I don't know the way to say that. I guess they're the most loved in the MSP space for US customers anyways. So we are looking at some other stuff. I can't say for certain if SheerWeb would be in there, but it is one that does come up frequently for sure. Fauzi's saying, okay, he was asking about the opening tickets from remote, and they have call centers, and yeah, it's exactly what Hannah said. It's really a process thing, and this is one of those things that I'm not one for like solid processes. I really don't care about that stuff until it costs me money, and this is one of the perfect examples of it. If you teach your folks to do exactly what Hannah said and obviously discipline them when they don't, then I think you'll close that gap right away. Because yeah, every time they don't do that, obviously it's costing you money, and that sucks. And then Link is adding some context to, I forget who was asking about the folks not kind of like refusing to go on updated software. He says, make the cost to support the out-of-date software higher than the cost to get it current. That's a good suggestion too. I think Link summed it up in one sentence where I took 5 minutes. So thank you, Link, appreciate that.
That was awesome. I'm gonna grab a couple here. Randy says, can you go over a brief list of some of the latest updates Syncro has come out with? I heard there were updates to notifications. I know about policies, just wondering if I missed anything. I'm gonna show you a really great place to find this real quick, because I think policy inheritance and the Watchmen news has been like something that we've been looking forward to and so excited about. So those are kind of top of the list for me. But if you go outside of your Syncro login, just straight to synchromsp.com resources, we have blog, which is like updates and new things, and then we also have release notes, which is separate. So I would take a look at both, because obviously, like I said, here's policy inheritance. We have some blog posts here of like how to onboard new customers, how to promote ransomware security to your clients, different things like that, like industry news, things like that, in regard, or like how to run your MSP more profitably, or different articles surrounding that. But release notes are separate here, and it talks about all of the new things that we've shipped, bug fixes, stuff like that. So those would be the two areas. Like I said, I think top of mind for everybody. Top of the list is the policy inheritance and the new Watchman acquisition, which is pretty exciting. And then I'm going to grab this next one here from Derek. It says, is there a way to figure out the asset age of a device using the API, like how old the system is? Is biostate the best way, as it's not on everything? So I'm going to link, I don't personally use the API, day in and day out. So I'm going to link the KB on this. And then from what I've heard, it is super easy to use through Syncro. We use a program called Swagger, which makes it super easy to find all of the fields that you can pull information from and pre-fill through Syncro. So I did drop this KB into the chat box for you.
A question from Ari saying, I have an automated remediation set up for hard drive errors. It triggers an email to the client as well as the technician. Then it fires off more disk checking and scripts and emails to the technician. Okay, for the technician to look at the results. However, there are a couple of devices where the storage alert is triggering for their printer regularly. And it basically is talking about false positives and how to mitigate that. Ari, I got to be honest, if you're talking about the hard drive smart error, that's pretty weird to get tripped from a printer because obviously they're not going to report back smart failures. Same for defrag. If you're talking about low storage alert, I could see that where if somebody's got like an SD card or something in the printer maybe, and it's mostly full, it could trip unless you specifically, because you can specifically decide what drive letters or system drive you're monitoring for drive space alerts. So I would actually send that into support. If you're talking about smart errors that are getting tripped from printers, that definitely isn't cool. So yeah, send that in and we'll take a look at that. Fauzi's asking, is there any way to get an alert every time there is a new script added to the library? No, not right now. I will say that in 2022, we've got some interesting things we're going to try to do around community library type things. In terms of the script library today, it is locked from new submissions currently. I mean, if there's something immediate, we will enable it. But we are doing this thing that we started a couple months ago. If you're not aware, with CyberDrain, I assume everybody's going to know who they are. They're just studs in the industry as far as PowerShell scripting is concerned. They're probably the best in the business. And they'll give us 3 new scripts every month that they'll put in our library for us, and we do announce those. And then they will also do 2 custom ones. So on our Facebook group, for everybody who's not on there, go ahead and join. We'll do a thing every month where people can give us script submissions, ideas. You don't have to write the script, just I want it to do X. And we'll pick our 2 favorites. We'll give it to them and verify that it can be done. And assuming it can, they write them and we add them back into our community library. And you'll of course go down in history as the reason why that happens. So you'll live on, in infamy, or however you say that. Let's see, what else do we got here? Okay, Ari is saying, yeah, it's not the smart alert. It's the event log policy alert. Ari, then I'm even more confused because if you're monitoring an event log, okay, you're saying that the printer is tripping something. Okay, if I understand correctly, you're using an event log to monitor hard drive events, and you're saying that sometimes printers are getting matched in there. It would be weird if they were getting matched with the same event ID, but I would be shocked if everything was identical between that event log entry and one from an actual hard drive. So I'd take a close look at that. Like, you might be able to evaluate the body of it and filter those out. I'm pretty sure you could do that through automated remediation today.
Awesome. I'm going to grab this top one, Michael. I think this is in reference to a question that you asked previously, but I feel like I don't have enough information to answer it. So I'm just going to read it out loud and see if you can kind of follow up on some more details here. Michael says, on the price request, how would I request a price from the order department without it being accidentally ordered? I might be looking to build a network and I need current prices. What would you suggest? Like parts, but not triggering the ordering department to place the order, just current prices. Are you saying like if you're working with a vendor and you're looking for quotes from the vendor that you're looking to purchase from and then adding that into Syncro? Hannah, do you know?
I think that's related to his other question. So Michael, you can actually pull the prices themselves. You would have to, like I mentioned earlier, integrate with a tool like Zomentum and push the estimate into Syncro. Now, depending, I think, on your particular business processes, I'm not sure what they are. And so I'm not sure when the ordering department gets notified that something should be ordered. I think that would be a pretty unique scenario. But when an estimate in Syncro gets approved, you can have a notification sent to somebody, for example. And so if you wanted to build an estimate inside of Syncro, you would have to, let's say we didn't have an integration, reference the other vendor price, reference the current vendor pricing, and then update that on your products inside of Syncro. But then you could send out that estimate, and then when it got approved, your ordering department could get a notification.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Hannah. Michael, hopefully that helps. Hopefully that helps and reach out to support if you have any follow-up questions there.
We have time for one more.
Yeah, let's do one more.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, again, an anonymous attendee, they're asking about thoughts on prepayment for recurring services. They're looking for a way to mitigate their loss when a charge fails on a recurring invoice, like when payment fails at the first of the month, then they find out the customer doesn't intend to pay, and then they're out of money for that month's services, since most of their managed services don't offer prorated refunds. I would say this, it's a cost of doing business. And if you want to start making everybody pay up front, and that's something that you're telling people as part of the pitch process, negotiation process, whatever you want to call it, you're going to always assume that you're competing against somebody else. And if you're forcing them to do that, the other person isn't, it automatically kind of moves their proposal to the top of the stack. This is not going to happen a lot. Somebody could be late to pay, but they're going to be like late to pay and I'm never going to pay you. It's still better to have them for 6 months and lose a month of service than not have them at all. So again, I would never ask people to pay up front. I do know it sucks, especially if you've had to eat a decent amount. But the truth is, unless you're completely capped on the hours you're spending every month, it's not hours that you were spending or doing other things. So it's always worth the risk. And I would never consider losing a contract to try and defend yourself against a situation like that.
I think that last one is also for you, just from Jeremy. Andy says that's for you, Andy.
Oh, sorry, I missed that one. He's saying about a GitHub repository for vendors to publish certified connectors for their API. And he's saying that'll help make more money because his Swagger skills aren't super good. Yeah, I'll say this. I mean, the API isn't really meant to, it is and it isn't meant to augment functionality. At higher levels, if you have custom stuff that you're doing and it helps you sell, I do agree, but at the same time, you probably have the folks on staff that are developing that for you. I got to be honest, and I say this lightly because we do take a lot of time on our API, but if you're like a 1 or 2 tech MSP and you find yourself spending tens of hours a week working API stuff, stop and repurpose that money or that time to go off and sell stuff. Because whatever efficiency you're going to gain from that time is immediately burned through if you could trade it for new customers. So Jeremy, there's not necessarily a plan for that today. Doesn't mean never, but for now there's not.
Awesome. Thank you for addressing that, Andy. All right, guys, we got to wrap up. We're 2 minutes late. Corey's asking, when do we have Syncro Bootcamp Day in person? I don't know. We do need a live in person, like a SynchroCon or OctoCon or something. I love that idea, but
It'll be so fun.
Not currently on the books, unfortunately.
Totally down. The first one's going to be in Las Vegas. I declare it.
Yes.
Yes.
Guys, I've never been to Vegas.
Oh my goodness, Hannah.
I'm missing something in my life.
Yeah, we'll have first SynchroCon and first Hannah's trip to Vegas. So I think now it has to happen for sure. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up. Thank you so much for being here. It's an absolute pleasure hanging out with you guys every single Friday. We'll see you guys next week.
Have a good weekend. See everybody.
Bye.